So shout out to Alexis and Jasmine from Tequeria. I've been a member for 3 years. So if you guys don't know Tequeria, if you're new to it, is a space for people that identify as Latinx and allies that are interested in working in tech. When they had in-person events and they're starting to come up again, that's where I met a lot of people when I first moved out to Brooklyn. So I am a huge fan. So to get rolling with today, my biggest thing for me today is to help you come out of this workshop feeling confident and empowered when it comes out to negotiation. So I personally believe that when it comes to negotiating, like each of you deserve everything and much, much more. And it's not just about salary. And I want to talk about some of the things I've learned while coaching candidates and even in my process while negotiating. As I mentioned, you are feel free to drop in the chats. Any questions you have or come off on mic. This is a small group, so I love it when people ask me questions because this is for you. Okay, so I always like to create an agenda because this helps me structure what I'm going to say. And there's several things that I put up here to review. But like I mentioned, this is a workshop for you, not myself. So if there's anything that is not up here or that you're concerned about, please feel free to put in the chat. More than likely, it might come up in my other slides, but I do also want to let you know that I have reserved time at the end for Q&A and that these slides will be sent out to everybody and the recording as well, if there's anything you missed. Is there any questions, Alexis? I'm going to keep checking in with you.
No questions. If anything, I'll just chime in and let you know that
okay.
We have the chat.
Okay, so I think the whole goal when it comes to negotiating is getting that job offer, right? I love this pick because she's obviously gotten something that she's wanted. But to be honest, even for myself and working with a lot of job seekers, I realized that some of the things that are hindering us from getting what we want when it comes to a job or a job offer is our mindset about money and also understanding what our value is. So today, I want you to consider, what are some of the areas that you're concerned about when it comes to an offer? Is it the commute? Is it work-life balance? Is it your monthly paycheck, how much you're taking home? Is it planning for your future retirement? Or it could be something as benefits for you and whoever you live with. So I think the best part is getting the job offer. Hands down, when you interview with the company and then they come back to you and say, we want you as part of our team, I think it's always a great feeling because you feel like, hey, someone wants me to be part of their team. After so many interviews, you finally made it. I'm going to walk over several of the stages. Some of you may be familiar with it, but I think just for all of us who may be new to this or who've been doing this for a while, we just want to make sure that we're aware of the stages and what happens in each stage. So generally after interviewing, and if a company decides that they want you on the team, they're going to extend a verbal offer. And I've learned that as excited as you may be, you don't want to say yes to that verbal offer. You want to follow up and have them follow up with an email where they actually send you in writing what your offer is. And that includes the job description, the salary, additional compensation, which can include stock options, retirement planning, and have it all in writing because you want to take the time to read it and make sure if there's something there that wasn't discussed or brought up, you're going to ask those questions. The other part of it is, and I don't think a lot of us actually sit down to do this, but when I was a recruiter at Google, I remember we would actually present to candidates the total compensation. So it's really important for you to know how much are you getting out of everything they're giving to you. That can include a sign-on bonus, that can include your annual salary. How much does the medical cover? Is it just 100% or 80%? Some people create a Google sheet and enter all of those numbers in there, but you can actually, I put a link in here. There is a website called levels.fyi where they actually have a calculator and you can just input your numbers and then it'll work out the total compensation for you. And I think that's really helpful because let's say you're interviewing with several companies and you want to know what's the complete package. This helps you review both offers. The second stage is reaching out to your recruiter. So my experience working as a recruiter, I know a lot of people are under this assumption that most recruiters get a commission. Most of the time, some recruiters, especially if they're working in-house with a company, there really is no commission involved. It's really more about being able to successfully close a position and have someone that they've been working with get a job. And that's helpful for the recruiter because then they can move on to other positions, but also they've completed their outcome, they found the right person for the right team. So when you're in the process, I always recommend to people, look at your recruiter as your advocate. They want you to succeed. They want you to move to the final stage and say yes, but you also need to reach out to them if you need any additional info. And that additional info can include, hey, can I get, more information on benefits? Different companies have different tiers, depending if you're an individual or if you have a domestic partner or family. They also can break down the total compensation of equity that you're getting. Or let's say, you're interviewing with multiple companies. I always recommend that job seekers are very transparent with their recruiter, because if the recruiter really wants you, they're going to ask you, what can we do to keep you here? And they're going to advocate for you during the offer process so that you can get what you've asked for. The other thing too is if you need time. In tech, they call them exploding offers because sometimes I've heard of offers being 2 days to 4 days to 5 days. It's a quick turnaround. And the reason it's a quick turnaround is they know that it's a very competitive market. There's other companies that people are interviewing for, and they want to make sure that they have you on board. It's not a strategy to dupe you. It's more that they know that they have good talent and they don't want to lose the talent. So if you need an extension, that is the time to ask for an extension because they're making multiple offers and you want to make sure you have that enough time to do that. And the last thing I want to remind you is be prepared to negotiate. Tech is an industry where it is notoriously known that everybody negotiates. Recruiters expect it, hiring managers expect it. It's a very competitive market. So they know if they can't offer you what you need, you can easily go to another company and go there. But if you have the skill sets, if they feel like you're a great candidate, they're going to work with you to meet that, place that you're going to be happy with. So I always tell candidates, you don't have to go in and say yes, they expect you to negotiate. So for some of us who may feel awkward, don't worry about it. That's part of the process. And when you check all of that off, that's when you can officially accept the offer. Wanted to check here the temperature and see if anyone has any questions here, anything that they want me to cover, or most likely I'll cover when I go into the other slides. Okay, so just to share a little bit about my story, about a year ago, I actually decided I wanted to get better at my financial, fitness and understanding of finances. And one of the things I struggled with for a while is my money mindset. Coming from immigrant parents from El Salvador, being the oldest daughter, I always felt guilty about wanting more. Even though I know that I've worked hard, I've gone on to not only get a bachelor's, but also a master's degree and worked in several different organizations and, put my work in. It was really hard for me, one, to think that I was worth, six figures salary, or even the fact that, you know, what if I asked a company, wouldn't that look like I was ungrateful? So around that time, like 2 years ago, I remember I started working with a coach, and we started talking about money mindset. And one of the things that we discussed is having a salary, what was the number that I was aiming for, and not, moving away from it, not fudging it, just keeping it where it was at. And it was very uncomfortable when I first did that exercise with him. But I realized that I was doing myself a disservice by not asking for more, and just settling. So, just to share with you, one of the books I started reading was You Are a Badass at Making Money. And what it talks about is just the mindsets that we carry from childhood, from our family about, what we can or can't ask for. But I think the key thing is realizing that you are worthy of asking for what you want and getting it. We've been raised to believe that you have to work hard to make money. And certainly there are times when this is true. But the real secret is you have to take huge, uncomfy risks. You have to do stuff you've never done before to make yourself visible, to acknowledge your own. And part of this process actually is negotiating. No one else is going to do it for you unless you start doing it for yourself. So this is why I like doing this workshop, because I know firsthand how awkward or uncomfortable it can seem, but I also know how it feels like to be in a job and feeling like you're not being compensated for the work you've put in. And that's not a good feeling. And this is why moving forward, I think after working with a career coach, I realized, this is what I deserve, because I don't want to go back feeling like I should be earning more. I need to find a new job where I can earn more. I need to do this to earn more. Like, there are opportunities for you to earn what you deserve and get the compensation that goes along with it. So when I work with clients, my biggest thing when I work with job seekers is, tell me your why. I know all of us need money to pay the bills, but what is driving you? What's going to make you not flinch from your number? What's going to make you, what can you do with that increased salary or the additional compensation? So personally for me, I have a teen in high school who is going to go to college in a couple of years. And I also have two parents that both will be retired this summer. Family is really important to me, and also being able to take care of my family is one of the key things that I know. This is why I negotiate for more salary or just better benefits or flexibility when it comes to my schedule. Like, this is my why. This is why I don't flinch when I get into an interview or go, have to come back and review an offer and say, this is not going to do. Let's talk about some of the things that I can negotiate. So I wanted you guys to just take the opportunity. You could do it in the chat, and if you don't feel comfortable sharing, that's okay. But I kind of want to encourage you to tell me or tell the group, what is your why? All of us have different whys, but each of us know that that's the why that's going to push us and keep us going and make us not feel uncomfortable with the negotiation space. Alexis, do you mind sharing what those whys are? I can't see it.
Yeah, no problem. Nora Silva said, my why is my family as well. And then Janelle said, supporting my children and preparing for our future. And generational wealth. Ooh, that's a good one.
Yes.
Ooh, finger snaps right now. You
Yes.
can't
And I'm like, I have fire emoji. I'm like, fire emoji, people. I know some of us, graduated with college, and some of us may have debt. And that's something we're working off. Maybe you have a home you're saving up for. There's so many things. And I'm really excited because I can see the chat lighting up. But this is really important because this is something you have to hold on to. Because I know some of us, if we're the first ones in our family to go into tech, our parents may not understand it. Our close friends may not understand it. They might be like, why are you asking for more? And the thing is, you are asking for something that you deserve and that you can actually, for example, have more time if you earn more money. Just think about all the things you could do if you were given the compensation that you've wanted. So I think the next part is, um, you know your why, but I think some of us are left thinking, well, how much am I worth? Because it's always an awkward question to think, well, what's the price tag on me? And what I like to tell a lot of job seekers is it really depends on your location. It depends on the amount of experience you have, not only in tech. I want you to also consider the experience you have outside of tech. Some of you might be transitioning into tech and maybe have worked in management, marketing, maybe have worked on different projects with different teams. Like that brings value to a company. The other thing is recognize that for a lot of companies, the investment they put into just hiring and onboarding one employee can range from like 12K to 50K. So there's a lot at stake when companies are hiring people. So on the same spectrum, you need to think, well, there's a lot that I'm putting into a company. And the way I see it is, if you're asking for six figures, I know that I'm going to put six figures worth of work into a company. They're getting their money's worth. And that's where you have to recognize, like, I'm deserving of that. So the first place you want to start is always go to your recruiter who's your advocate and ask them for a salary band. So a lot of several states now actually have laws where the job's description should include how much the salary is. In the event that doesn't, that's like California and New York City, you want to go back to your recruiter and just say, what's the salary range? And they can be transparent and say 90 to 100K, 100K to 120K, but start with them first. The other thing is use the internet and look for places where you can look for salaries. So the places that I like, and I gave examples of New York City and LA, but Built In actually takes information from different tech companies in different areas. So they have, I think, Built In Atlanta, they have Built In LA, Built In Denver, and they show different tech roles, and you can see the range. The other one is Levels FYI, where you can type in based on the company or title or the location, and it'll show you the range. And as you can see here, like for LA, it is huge, the range. Most people are falling between 65K to 145K. But the reason I feel like this is a powerful example is you might just be going off of where you made in your last job. And you're thinking, well, a little bit more is okay. But what I like to recommend to a lot of job seekers is, go for 10 or 20% more. They already expect you to negotiate. There is a demand for people to fill those roles. Ask for it. And the reason I say that is you don't want to get lowballed. 10 to 20%, moves higher than what you were expecting. And more than likely, let's say they come back with an offer that's like in the middle, that's still way more than what you were going for. The other thing you have to take into consideration is how many times do they actually do increases in this job? Do they give bonuses? Like, what are you walking into? And is this enough for you to live on for the next couple of years? And I think at the end of the day, that's why it's important to do like the total compensation. So, yes, this is this is good for me or no, but you should also know just from doing your research what is also out there. So it really depends on big companies and little companies. Bigger companies can afford that. But I also say use your network to your advantage. This is why informational interviews are so key. And organizations like Bedilia, like connect with people, ask them about their experience working in the company. You're not going to go upright and ask them, how much do you make? But ask them, how was the interview process? How was the salary process, the negotiation process? Sometimes you'll learn that you can ask for a bonus. Sometimes you'll learn that they don't always give annual bonuses, or how do they even give increases in a company? We'll talk about that in another slide, but I think it's really important for you to understand the pay structure, because let's say you go in accepting a salary and that's the salary that you stick with for a while there. If that's something you're okay with, that's one thing. But if that's something you're not expecting, that's something you want to know you're getting into ahead of time. The other thing that I feel like is really important are your non-negotiables. So this is the salary number that you want to stick to, but it's also the other parts of your work that you need, that you definitely need. So for some of us, if we have children, we want to know, like, do we get coverage for our dependents? Depending on the company, some of them will offer 100% coverage or 80% coverage. And that makes a huge difference, because that percentage that isn't covered is taken out of our paycheck, which means what we're taking home each month is different. The other thing is retirement planning. If they have a 401k, do they give a match? How much is the match? Do they offer stock options? Do they offer equity? And when are you actually vested in the company? Do you get that money after working there 2 years? Do you have to stay there 4 years? Those are key things you want to know. And the other thing could be something as simple as your work hours. I think especially with COVID, a lot of folks became more wary of like a 5-day work week. Is this a company that will offer flexibility and allow you to work remotely and maybe come into the office when is needed, or they just want you to come 2 days a week? If you're raising children, or maybe you're taking care of a family member, or maybe, the other truth is some of us live far away from the city that we work in, and the commute takes up most of our time, and that you can use that commute time doing work. Those are key things you want to consider in terms of your non-negotiables and having those lists of things. And as I mentioned before, you always want to be prepared to negotiate, not only just the salary, but the additional areas that go into the compensation. Any questions here, folks?
Hey, Bedilia, there actually is a question from Mitsui.
Okay.
She asked, do you have any specific advice to negotiating salary for contract roles, given that the pay rate is hourly?
Yes. And I can actually send you something separately. So I actually do a contract role. And I think with contract roles, it works differently because we don't get the additional benefits tagged on. But I actually found a calculator that calculates, how much we're making and how much we can ask for. So for example, even if they say, hey, $50 an hour, like it doesn't translate to like $100,000 salary, because we're not getting the same things as a typical regular salaried employee. So my advice is to always err on the higher side, and always try to negotiate, how many hours, how long is the contract. But I can definitely follow up, Mitsui, with a calculator that I found online that has been really, really helpful, especially when I'm negotiating contracts and determining, how much I need to get paid depending on how much work I'm doing for that company. Any other questions, Alexis?
Yes. There's another question is, do people negotiate start time / date pretty regularly?
Yeah, that's a thing. And I know every company wants you to start now. But I've heard instances like people who, needed time to exit one job or maybe just needed to take a break before they went on a new job. You can negotiate that. When I talk about sign-on bonus, I'll talk about, negotiating if you're taking, a huge time before you start. I know for a lot of like new grads, some companies are really flexible and they're like, when do you want to start? But that's because they have a ton of positions in that area. But I think the key thing is understanding what the company needs and also where they're willing to meet you middle ground. Let's say someone is exiting and other people are picking up the work. I know most employers are like, yeah, sure, we'll give you time, but I think it's also just to be considerate, seeing where there's a middle ground that works for them and works for you. But all those things are negotiable, especially also like, let's say you're moving to a new location, you can definitely negotiate the start time. Any other questions?
Yeah, we have quite a few rolling in. So the next question is, how firm is the range mentioned by a recruiter in an opening call? It always mentioned, quote unquote, it depends.
So that's the thing, because that's their way of trying to screen out people. But I think that's why networking is so important, because you can learn a little bit more about the company, the ins and outs. Like, are they getting more money? Are they acquiring like a new project or a new company? Um, every company basically has a budget, and each team is given a head count of how many people they can hire. You don't know what's going on in the company. What if someone leaves? What if they decide this position, they want to change it up? There's like so many things going on the inside that a recruiter may tell you one thing, but it's really management that has more ideas about what's going on behind the scenes. So I always err on the side, like if they're really lowballing you really low, that's why they always start with the conversation. Just be honest with them and say, I'm actually looking for a higher salary, or this is the range I'm looking for. Is there another role that would be a better fit? Just let them know, because then they're going to go back to their team and share that information, and their team is going to reevaluate. Maybe we need to like offer more compensation for this role. So I always recommend be honest with the recruiter, but there's definitely wiggle room because they're not setting those salaries. It's more of management, but also you don't know what's going behind the scenes, and all of those things can change in the middle of the interview process. Any other questions?
Yeah, so we do have about 5 or 6 questions. So before we get to those, I'm not sure if you wanted to continue on or if you want to just answer a couple more. You let me know.
I think I'm going to go through the slides because I'm going to talk about areas you can negotiate, because it sounds like most people are asking questions about what you can negotiate.
Correct.
And then when we hit the resources page, that's like Q&A, and we can do that. And then I'm just doing a time check. So yes,
It's 4:30.
it's 4:30. Okay, we're
We
good.
still have time. All right.
Okay.
So everyone, I'm just going to mute myself again now.
Okay. So I just want to quickly review the anatomy of a job offer, what to expect, and also share what are other things that go into an offer that you can negotiate that sometimes people don't think about. So we discussed salary. Health insurance is really key. I think that's a big one in this country, but recognizing that depending on the insurance, it looks different. So like, for example, in the West Coast, Kaiser is like the well-known medical provider. And most companies offer Kaiser, but there's different tiers when they offer Kaiser, where you can expect maybe to have a copay if you join one tier, but there's another tier where you don't have to worry about the copay. So what I always recommend is get more information on it. You can actually get information where it breaks down how much you will pay per paycheck or per month. So you can estimate how much your take home pay is. PTO and vacation time. So some companies offer, unlimited vacation or PTO time, but I would also ask when you can take this. I think when people say unlimited, sometimes employees get a little wary and then they wonder like how much is too much and what if other people aren't taking it, like they feel kind of awkward just taking it whenever. But I would ask more about the vacation and PTO time. Also negotiate it. Some people I know in other jobs, I've done that before where I'm like, uh, some companies will say, okay, the first year you get 15, and then after 2 years you get 20. Could you just get 20 off the bat? Maybe you have kids, maybe you need more time off. If this is something that's truly important to you, family, I would say putting that on the table when it comes to negotiation. The other area that I think is important is sick time. So sick time for some companies not only includes you, but your family members. So that means you can get paid time off if, let's say, your child is sick, or what if a family member gets really sick? If that's something that you're considering because maybe you have sick parents or a sick family member, ask about their family medical leave. Some companies are really generous and they realize they can extend it to you. I've heard of companies where they even have employees donate hours if you run out of hours. The other thing too is like, you never know, like some people might get sick. During COVID, this happened a lot, and employers start to recognize that they needed to give time off for people, but those times needed to be extended because they needed more than 2 days to recuperate. I mentioned stock options and 401k retirement. Depending on the company, you can negotiate. Let's say they give you a certain salary, but maybe they can't give you the salary compensation you want. You can negotiate if there's more equity or more stock options that they can give you and the total compensation. So for example, at Google, they would call it GSU, Google stock units. So I think the standard was like 100, 150. Sometimes candidates would come back and say, well, can I get 200? Especially if you're interviewing with another company. This is where you have a lot of leverage. The other thing is retirement, asking them what your options are. What if they only offer 25%? Could they offer 50%? Is this something that they can include to sweeten the deal? When it comes to bonuses, I think for a lot of us, like I wasn't always aware of the different structures. I was like, oh, that's like a nice to have. I didn't know that you can always get that. I've been hearing from a lot of job seekers, especially now where a lot of folks are going back to work and companies are hiring. Sign-on bonuses are big. So a sign-on bonus basically is a one-time deal. It's a sign-on bonus to kind of say thank you for accepting the offer with us. It could be like 4K, 10K, depends on the company. Some people, what they do is they negotiate it if, let's say you're considering two companies, and they're like, well, what could we offer you, to guarantee that you could come on board? I've had job seekers who have asked for a 10K bonus. The other thing I see it as, for example, someone mentioned a start date. Let's say you are a boot camp grad and maybe you took time off, to do a boot camp, and your start date is in 2 months from now. I would say negotiate a sign-on bonus. Let them know, well, it's going to be 2 months until I get on, what could stop you or prevent you from interviewing with another company where you can start immediately? So express to them, I want to work with you guys. I want to be excited about coming on. Can we talk about a sign-on bonus? An annual bonus really relates to a company and its performance. So some companies, depending on how they perform, they give a percentage bonus to employees, if they did really well. Sometimes, the other thing you need to consider is what if they don't do well and they don't give you a bonus? So I would Ask them, about their bonus structure, how does it look like? The other one that's really popular is performance bonuses. So in some tech companies, they don't really have a structure. Like at Google, it really was depending on how much your manager wanted to give you. But you want to get a clear understanding of, well, after how many times, months here do I get a performance feedback? And what happens if my performance is really good? Does that include an annual raise? Is everyone given a performance bonus? What is the percentage? This way you can kind of calculate, if you were to accept the salary at where you're at now, how much time would you need to increase to a salary, where you're expecting to go. Maybe you're trying to get into six figures, or maybe you're trying to make 140K or 150K. These are all things that you want to take into consideration and ask them about. And these are some things I think not everyone always talks about, because we always focus on salary or stock options, but bonuses is something you should definitely look into, consider. I put a link in resources too to help you with that as well. So what else can you negotiate? I think this is the really big thing. So it's not only about salary. Go back and think about your why. What is it that makes you get up each morning, go to work, and want to earn more? We talked about the sign-on bonus. So for example, depending on the size of the company, there's companies that can offer you a relocation bonus that includes paying for your movers, paying for your car to be shipped out there. And then there's some companies who are like, well, our budget is like 2K, this is where a sign-on bonus can be very helpful. And you can mention to them, like, yes, I know this is how much I ask for my salary, but knowing that I have to move and you guys don't have a moving expense salary, can I negotiate for a sign-on bonus to cover that? The other one I mentioned is a gap between the start date. The other key thing too is, for a lot of us, we want to continue to excel in our career. So asking them if that's something that's important to you. Do they cover certification or tuition reimbursements? Some companies offer a stipend of 5,000. Some companies offer a stipend of 2,500, and some companies don't have that. But maybe one of the things you're interested in is, I want to be part of an association, or I want to be able to go to conferences at least twice a year. You can ask for that when negotiating. Some companies even give access to career coaching or coaches. Ask them if that's something that's available. If that's something that's really important to you, maybe you want to get into management, ask them about that and see if that's something that you can negotiate. The other key thing is work environment. So a lot of us may be working from home. You can ask. Some companies already have a stipend to update your home office. Some of them don't. So if you know you're going to be working from home most of the time, that's going to be your office, and you want to feel comfortable and do the best work, ask them for a stipend. Can they give you something so that you can get a new desk, a new chair? There's so much things involved when you're working from home. And all those things are pricey, because some of the stuff that they have at the office is pricey. The other thing that's cool is, I remember I worked with one company where they offered a shared workspace. So we were working remotely, but we also could use WeWork to do work away from home. And that's really nice too. So if that's something you're interested in, ask for it. The other thing too is commuter benefits. Here in New York City, a lot of us take the subway, but there's some companies that can offer to pay for gas. If you're carpooling, all those things are really helpful, especially now when gas is really high. I know that will be coming in handy. The other area that sometimes gets overlooked is health and wellness. Some companies have gyms on site, but they also do offer gym membership. I do believe that having you being healthy, both mind and body, does create a better work environment for employees. So for me, that also includes the mental health component. Some hospitals and insurances, I will be honest with you, don't have the best mental health network. Some of us want to get therapists or want to get additional services where people that were going to look like us represent our culture. And sometimes that can't be found in the typical hospital settings. So ask them, do they have a separate plan for that? Is that something that you can include in your offer? The other thing too is, let's say, they expect employees to come in a certain amount of days per week. Um, it's not always 9 to 5, especially if you have a kid, or maybe you're dealing with caregiving with a parent or family member, or maybe you just perform better at different hours. You can work that out. I remember with one startup, I told them before, this was way before COVID, I was going to work remotely Monday and Friday and go to the office Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. That was part of what I needed to go on board. And they said that that was okay. So it never hurts to ask, especially if that's something you need to be successful in your job. And the other thing we mentioned too is that additional vacation time in PTO. Um, there's a story like I've had coworkers who postponed honeymoons because they were coming on board with work, but they negotiated like a different time frame where they would take off um, and do their honeymoon or vacation time. So, please know that all these things do come up. We're all human. We have certain events in our life. So you can share this with your recruiter. The last one that Alexis was mentioning is family planning. So I think it's really huge now that a lot of companies are recognizing that when it comes to family planning, there is not one way for people to have children. It just doesn't involve a mother getting pregnant. People now do adoption, they do surrogate parenting, and sometimes people have difficulty having children and need to do IVF. If you know anyone close to you that has done that, you will know that it is very, very costly. And a lot of companies, because they're recognizing that there's different family models in the US, are recognizing that, if they want to bring people on board, they need to offer benefits that reflect their lifestyle. So some of them actually offer fertility benefits where if the insurance doesn't cover IVF, they can actually put an amount upfront. I include an article in resources where I tell you the names of companies and what kind of benefits they offer. The other thing too is if you are adopting, they do extend family leave time, and the amount of family leave time ranges differently between each company, but it isn't your typical 12 weeks that everyone typically gets. It could be more. The other thing too is for a lot of women who are still unsure, if they want to have kids or not, some companies are offering the opportunity for them to freeze their eggs. They recognize that that's an important decision and they want to extend that offer. They don't want that to prevent someone from joining, that they're worried about family planning. So all these things are things that you can ask for when you are negotiating with the company, or just ask them, is this something that you include? I want you to feel empowered and not feel embarrassed about asking this. I think a lot of employers recognize, we don't have a cookie cutter employee. People are coming from different backgrounds. The other big one is, let's say for some people, they're transitioning. That's something that some companies have started to offer. I know some states like California, it could get covered with the health insurance offered through California, but now some companies are offering that. And I think that's really huge because that just means that they're being inclusive of different people of different backgrounds that want to work with these companies. So this is my resource page, and this is basically the heads up so that you guys know that you can answer questions. I can answer any questions, but Um, I'm going to stop sharing and look at your faces and then answer any questions in the chat. So where did we leave off?
We left off at the next question being, can you negotiate being remote? That was by Jessica Arias.
Yes, you can. I think a lot of companies are recognizing that if they want talent, talent doesn't have to live in the same space. I think it just depends on the team. You know, some teams do want their employees to work closely, but there's Slack, there's Zoom, there's different ways, there's Discord that you can work with, you know, dispersed teams. That is something that you can negotiate. I have coworkers. I have one coworker who's in London right now, and we're still doing pretty good in our weekly team meetings. You know, she's doing her job, so it is definitely you're capable of doing that. Any other questions? I'm looking at the notes. Lucy, did you want me to clarify more about the sign-on bonus, or did I provide enough information?
Yeah, my question is in regards if it applies to all companies, but you mentioned already that is for big ones. And also, I'm a self-taught programmer, so I'm in the beginning, but I wanted to know more about it, if it's applicable or not, because I don't have the experience or the degree, for example. So yeah, it was more if being from a non-traditional, it's applicable or not.
So like for the sign-on bonus, like it doesn't just have to be big companies, it could be small companies. I recently had job seekers, they weren't like huge companies, but because they had another competing offer, that is something that they negotiated. I think a lot of tech companies know that there's a lot of competition out there. So one interesting story I have is there was one student I was working with, and she's a mom, and she was transitioning to programming. They basically asked her, well, what else do you want? You know, for you to come on board, what else do you want? So I will be honest and let you folks know, like, this is why having non-negotiables, understanding the different things that are available in different tech companies, like even going to Built-in and looking at the different benefits that folks get. It's not only about free lunch and, you know, having a gym on site. There's other things that employers are starting to offer because they realize that's what they need to have employee retention in the company.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. So for scripts, there's a couple of links I share. There was a company, Candor. I believe now they switched to crypto and companies in tech that offer crypto, but they used to offer salary negotiation workshops. So there's a link where if you sign up and put your email, they'll actually send you a resource, and they also include templates. I always recommend not doing it over email. I recommend, you know, setting up a call with the recruiter or the hiring manager, and discussing it over phone or a Zoom meeting. One, because it cuts off a lot of the miscommunication, and two, like it's very different. You know, it forces you to get out of your comfort zone and be succinct and explain, you know, this is why you need it. And a lot of companies like expect it. So I always recommend, you know, set up a call. You know, if there's something you aren't comfortable or have a question with on your sign-on, set up a call. As a recruiter, I would just say, hey, you know, we'll jump on the phone. Let's do a video call. Because a lot of times I know they probably felt uncomfortable asking, but also you're human. And we totally understand, like, there's different reasons, or maybe you're interviewing with other companies, but we want to ensure that we get your story right, so that when we present it to the hiring manager, they know why you want to get this offer. We want to make sure that we're giving them the correct answer, and not just saying it because we're like, we really like this person, because they're human too. And they recognize, like, hey, if this is important, it's important to us and we want them on the team. I'm looking at the question. So, are employers in California required to disclose salary rangings and job postings? I would need to look into that. I know in New York City we did that, and I know not everyone is doing it, but I would say do a quick search on Google. For some reason, I thought it was California too, or if that's something they're working on. How to spell that name? Okay, I'll put it in here. Okay, so Mike wanted to double check. I know I mentioned something about the recruiter giving you a number that's very low. Do you want to share if there's any additional questions, or I guess, what are the areas that would be helpful for me to answer?
Yeah. Hi. Thank you.
Hi, you're welcome.
Yeah, it was more so at the beginning stages. I've had some moments where they'll come with sort of estimations that are 30, 40K lower than what I'm expecting. And, sometimes I find it very hard to kind of just give up those interview process, like that interview process so early on. So just kind of would love your thoughts on that.
Okay, so does that mean, like, did you recently graduate and you're looking for like junior level roles?
No, usually it comes from a mismatch on their thoughts of what my experience is versus like where it actually is. Like it might be like sort of a slightly different titled role than maybe what I've done before, but I still have many years of experience in tech that are transferable. And there
Okay.
seems to be a mismatch there. Yeah.
Okay, so that's really key. I think sometimes recruiters just look at the tech skills and then they call you, and some of them aren't familiar with the additional experience. So walking them through and telling them off the bat, like, I actually have such and such experience, and this is the salary range I'm looking for. One, so that they can recognize, like, ooh, maybe these are not the right titles and I need to refer him to better ones. But two, just so that you also aren't wasting your time, like being, very upfront in the beginning, like, hey, these are actually the roles I'm looking for and the salary range. Was that helpful?
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. But I would just say, like, sometimes, like, they're also sometimes new to the field and they're learning. So you're also educating them and letting them know, like, oh, okay, this is good to know. Let me make a note of that. And if this type of job comes out, I'm going to reach out to him. Lucy, you have a question.
Yeah, thank you. My question is, what happened when you are in this, what seems to be your dream job, and you click with the team and everything seems amazing, but the recruiter and the company doesn't want to give you a range?
A raise or a range?
A range, yeah.
Of the salary?
Yeah.
They might not want to give you a range, but you definitely can do your research. I would say this is where it's helpful to have an extensive network that you could tap into, and they can give you some numbers. But you can certainly share your range with them and see what they say. When I was working with a career coach and he, made me comfortable with the range I remember when I started saying that range, and the interviewer, the hiring manager, wouldn't flinch. that's when I also recognize, oh, maybe I could ask for more, like if some people are like, oh, that's like way too high, but some companies are like, yeah, that's doable. I think that's also an indication like, hey, you could possibly ask for more, because they're not even flinching off of that. Like they're used to people coming at them with those numbers.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, so it is 5 o'clock and we are at time. I know that there's still a lot of questions kind of jumping in. I can actually send some of these questions over to Bedilia afterwards, and if she has the time to get back. So I don't know if you have any more parting words, Bedilia, but I just want to say I am so appreciative of this call. I learned so much, and I'm sure that everyone here learned as much as I did, if not more. So if you have any other words to say in the meantime, please, the stage is yours.
I would just say, like, I know it feels uncomfortable. I always say having knowledge is power. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. But I would also say, like, start giving those numbers out when you do interviews. It'll feel weird, but don't hold back. Always bet on yourself because you never can lose. And I'm really a firm believer that you deserve everything that comes to you because you've put the time and work. So don't ever take a no as no, you don't deserve it. That just means that's a no that's getting you closer to a yes. So that's my thoughts. But thank you again. Look forward to connecting with all of you. And also, like, if there's anyone in my network you want me to connect you with, more than happy to do that. Okay, folks. So keep doing what you're doing, but most importantly, like, put yourself first and realize that you're worth it.